All right, we're going to be picking up on the next section of Ecclesiastes for our Thursday night Bible study. And it'll be probably a shorter video just because this section is again just reiterating what we've kind of been covering already from chapter 1. So let's actually just read before we get into it what is being said in the rest of chapter 1. Let me pull this in real quick. And it says here, verses 12 through 18. It says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out wisdom, seek out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. So there he's just saying that by wisdom, right, he's sought to look at all the affairs of man, right? This is a king who's king over Israel. He has time on his hands, as it were. He's probably ruling in peaceful time. And if you notice that when there's peace in certain countries or certain nations, that's usually when a lot of searching out for different type of things happens, right? When there's war going on, you're too busy with that than to just kind of see what your mind can uncover. And that's why there's that old saying that Satan loves an idle man, as it were. So even though here Solomon is seeking to search out by wisdom, as we know in Solomon's life, things didn't always go as planned. So let's keep reading, so I can take this off of my face, as it were. It says, "It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this is also but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow." Let me move this aside here. Very interesting words here. What I really kind of want to focus on is, I have applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this is also but a striving after the wind. And this last verse here, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So that reality of, Solomon is, when the Lord came to him and said, basically asked him, whatever you ask, I'll give it to you. And Solomon asked for wisdom, and the Lord blesses him, because that is a beautiful answer, right? Not riches, not fame, not power. He asked for wisdom, right? So Solomon was wise. He was very wise, and so in his own wisdom, he sought to know all that was under the sun, as it were. And he sought to know wisdom and madness and folly. Basically, in a sense, wanting to know even the opposite side of wisdom. And here you could see why Solomon fell kind of the way that he did. He wanted to know all things, right? And so there's an old saying that says, ignorance is bliss, right? I know we've all heard it. We've all, and to some degree, have experienced the blissfulness of ignorance, right? I'm sure you've said, oh, I wish I just never knew that about that person. Oh, I wish you would have never told me, because now I can't look at that person the same. Or when you go to hotel rooms, right? There's a blissful ignorance and not knowing who slept in that room before you, or whose pillow this once was. If the four walls could talk, as it were, I'm sure you probably would not stay in that hotel room. So this ignorance is bliss. There's a reason why that's a saying. And Solomon here is kind of talking about that, right? That the more wisdom he acquired, and the more that he sought to, by wisdom, look into the world, go into the world, turn over every stone, as it were, get to know every experience, truly give himself over to gaining knowledge. The more he did that, the more he found emptiness, the more that he found sorrow, the more that he found vexation. So it's not that wisdom in and of itself is evil. It's not that knowledge in and of itself is evil. It's that wisdom and knowledge apart and devoid of God leads to an increased sorrow, right? There's a sense where when you don't have something and there's a hopeful expectation of that thing, you really in your mind think when you acquire this, that's when the tide's going to turn for you. That's when sorrow will be turned to joy, right? You see this in people who think, if I just had that job, if I just had that money, if I just had that wife, if I just had those children, if I just had da 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 da, and they really put their hope and trust in that. And when they get that, and now they have an increased knowledge and wisdom, because now what they thought was going to change their world, they have the knowledge of it, and now they see that the world is not all that different. There's an increased sorrow, because hope deferred makes the heart sick, like the proverb says. So it's not that wisdom and knowledge in and of themselves are bad, but this again is showing, just like routine and all that is vanity. Let's just say you don't have routine and all that. Now let's say that you have the time to go and seek out all the things of the earth, to go and find all the wisdom, find all the madness, find all the folly, find all the knowledge, and say you acquire it. This is again showing that all of that, apart from Christ, apart from God, apart from his glory, ends up as a chasing after the wind. It ends up in hopelessness. It ends up in sorrow, in vexation. When Solomon, think about it, when Solomon was using his wisdom to the glory of God, the nations were coming to him. When Solomon uses his wisdom to his own glory, his own gain, and he goes to the nations, as it were, that's when increased sorrow begins. That's when that vexation begins. That's when he's chasing after the wind. When he is using his wisdom for his own gain, his own reputation, his own desires, it leads to chaos. It leads to deep despair and horrible days. So learn from Solomon, right? If you're chasing after wisdom and knowledge and experience, all apart from Christ, if those are your end all be all, you're going to increase in sorrow. You're going to increase in vexation. You're going to increase in such despair, because all of that ultimately is not the final end. It's not the final result of what we're doing. So like Solomon, when he first sought after wisdom, it was a wisdom that came from God, and it was a wisdom that was being used to the glory of God. When he abandoned those things, he truly saw the meaningless of life, as he was chasing after wisdom for wisdom's sake, knowledge for knowledge's sake, experience for experience sake, and not wisdom, knowledge, and experience for Christ's sake, for God's sake, as it were. So learn from Solomon here that whatever you do devoid of Christ, devoid of his glory, is going to end in misery. It's going to end in despair. Even though for a moment it might seem pleasurable, for a moment it might seem like, I don't need that stuff. No, it's going to lead to chaos every single time, destruction. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he does that specifically by ripping you apart from living under the glory of God, your Father. So learn from wisdom, learn from Solomon, but better yet, learn from Solomon that your eyes might be fixed on the greater than Solomon, that your eyes might turn to the one who never used his wisdom for selfish, sinful gain and reputation and experience. Look to the greater than Solomon, Jesus Christ, whose wisdom incarnate, who he himself is the wisdom of God. And in him is hidden all the treasures of wisdom. Christ is the wisdom of God. He's the perfect embodiment of wisdom. He never used his wisdom in any capacity to sin or for selfish gratification. He was always using his wisdom, his knowledge, and his experience to the glory of God, even on our behalf. That's why Christ became our wisdom. By the foolishness of preaching and the preaching of the cross, Christ becomes our wisdom. And we needed that wisdom. We needed that greater than Solomon to be able to now have wisdom, knowledge, and experience, and have these things wrapped up under the glory of Christ. Because apart from that, it's going to be chaos, sorrow, and misery. So it's a beautiful little section here, and never study scripture apart from Christ.